Hello and welcome to this edition of Let's Talk About It, where my guest today is Mr. Frank Eakin. Frank, welcome to the show.
Yeah, good to see you, Ferrell. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. You know, today's show is about the film that's getting huge Oscar buzz, entitled
12 Years
12
a Slave.
Years a Slave. This film is doing incredibly well. It's getting so much attention. And Frank, you played a huge part in making this happen.
Oh no, I would say that my mother played a part in bringing attention to this story in the 20th century. Solomon Northup, if I could start from the little history, Solomon Northup was a free man of color who was kidnapped in 1841 in New York, and ultimately brought to central Louisiana, where he was enslaved until 1853, rescued. The book had a major impact on the abolitionist movement, which ultimately, helped fuel the fire leading up to the Civil War. And but it fell out of existence, if you will,
right.
After the Civil War. I think perhaps that people were, they had been through a trauma, and both North and South, and probably weren't in the mood to revisit this story, and it fell by the wayside and
right.
and into obscurity. My mother grew up in an area where Solomon was enslaved during the entire period of his stay in Louisiana, and she came across the book as a 12-year-old.
Right.
And she was one day she was the daughter of a planter, actually a small planter. Hopped in the truck with her dad one day, and they went to a plantation home of a very wealthy man named Dr. Hayes. The
Okay.
Hayes family controlled almost the entire parish.
In Louisiana.
In Louisiana, yes, where the area where Solomon had been enslaved, and so they're visiting there, and Dr. Hayes says to my mom, "Young lady, you're going to be bored sitting here listening to two old men. How would you like to read a book?"
And that was the book.
And I knew you were going.
That was the
book. So
book.
he reaches under the shelf and pulls out a dusty old copy of this book with the original version of 12 Years a Slave, with Solomon Northup's autobiography, and she becomes immersed in the book. And for the first time, she was reading a book about the area in which she grew up, and the names were familiar.
Wow.
If you've seen the movie or read the story, William Prince Ford, the Ford family,
Okay.
The Tanner family, all this, and these names are still there today. And she wanted to have her own copy of the book, but
right.
couldn't find one. When she went to school at LSU, she found a copy in a rare bookstore. It's called Claytor's Bookstore in Baton Rouge. She wrote her master's thesis about 12 Years a Slave.
Okay.
And spent about the next 20 years researching the story, authenticating it.
Right.
And published the first modern edition in 1968. And then flash forward, she became, I would say, like the authority on the subject, on all things Solomon Northup.
Wow.
And over the next 40 years, she came into contact with the descendants of people in the story. People would send her information and research from all over. In the accumulation of all that, she put in a final definitive edition, which is this book.
Okay.
Which she completed at age 88.
Wow.
In 2007.
That's amazing, because as I did research on you to learn more about it, it was interesting because your mom actually, that book actually became a life force for her. I mean,
it was
her
a
entire life was
yes.
basically spent researching and putting this amazing information together on Solomon Northup. And as I read the information, I was like, wow. Yeah. And not only that, but you guys come from a history of historians in your family, I come to realize. Mm-hmm. Everybody in your family basically is a historian. See, well, a lot of the aunts, rather, right?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And so I found that very interesting. But it's amazing how one thing can change the course
a book
of your life.
Yeah.
And it's also amazing that your son will take up the helm and take it to the next level.
He's the kind of kid that might do that.
Is he the kind of kid? And what's that kid's name?
Paul Eakin.
No. And I know she'd be very proud. I know your mother has passed on since that time, but I know she'd be very proud of the work that you have done.
Well, she would be thrilled that for her ambition, if you will, especially in her later years, is to have this story reach as broad an audience as possible.
Mm-hmm.
And we received calls and letters from people that are going to make a movie of the book for every several years,
right,
for 40 years.
And you had gotten so accustomed to hearing that when you got the call from Plan B Entertainment, which happened to be owned by Brad Pitt.
Mm-hmm.
I know you were completely blown away.
Well, no, because we didn't know it was them.
You did not know it was Brad Pitt?
Yeah.
Okay.
We thought
found out later.
We thought it was just another one of those.
Right.
It was actually my cousin who was in government in Alexandria, Louisiana, which is a town, small city near the place. It's called Bunkie, Louisiana, where the story took place. Present day, it's called Bunkie, and so Alexandria. My cousin was he was in government there, and he received a call, and this was the year Mom died, actually. And it's we was like, okay, here's another one, and we really didn't take it seriously.
Mm-hmm.
And then but it kind of stayed on my radar,
right?
And every once in a while I'd go to IMDb, and see if there's something going on there.
Right.
And then I heard through industry folks that, hey, really, there is something going on.
Yeah.
And so I contacted then Plan B, and then they've been extremely good to us, and Fox has as well. Yeah.
Fantastic. I know they actually took a lot of the research that you had to actually apply it to the film and make it more authentic.
Yeah, and I didn't know to what degree they were using my mother's research, but there was an article in the Wall Street, it was in the New York Times recently, that was about 3 months ago. John Ridley was quoted, the screenwriter, as saying that he relied heavily on my mom's work, and so that was validation. And I saw him in L.A. at the Hollywood premiere of 12 Years a Slave. We had a nice discussion.
Is that right?
Mm.
Wow. We actually had the opportunity to be at 12 Years a Slave, the exclusive engagement that was here in the city of Houston, and that was such an awesome moment for all of us, and I'm blown away. And the film also blew me away, and I think it's a film that everybody should see. Was it a very painful thing for you as you read some of the things that your mother had written, or how did you actually feel about a lot of the things that you saw in the book?
In the film?
Yeah, and actually in the book itself.
Well, I grew up with the book. I mean, literally.
You know what?
So
because Solomon was like a brother to y'all,
Solomon,
right?
I'm not kidding.
Yeah,
Solomon was a sibling. Yeah.
Because you heard of the name so frequently in the house.
I mean, it was around our house. I mean, my mother kept this enormous archive, and I'm not kidding when I say that about half of our house consisted of Mom's archive. When we donated her archive after she passed away, it takes up fully 1/3 of the entire archive of Louisiana State University at Alexandria.
Come on.
Yes. There's a full-time person who's in charge of her archive, and that lady said that's her entire career. She said there's so much to do.
Wow.
So we ate and slept Solomon Northup growing up.
That is
and so
amazing.
there was never a time that I can remember that he was he was not kind of part of our discussion.
That he wasn't present, huh?
He wasn't present, yeah.
Wow.
And she preserved the house, for example. It was a house that you see in the movie. It's the one that Brad Pitt and Chiwetel as Solomon and as Samuel Bass. Brad Pitt was playing. They were building a house at the end, a small house next to the big house.
Absolutely,
right?
Yes.
Well, that small house it survived, and my mother had it preserved. And today it's located at Louisiana State University, where her archive is housed. And and she even wrote a musical, 12 Years a Slave, which played in Louisiana, and someday maybe revive that. And she created, it's called the Northup Trail, and a lot of interest has developed in this Northup Trail since the movie.
And you know what? We're going to get more information on the Northup Trail in just a moment. When we come back with more, let's talk about it. You guys stick around for more Frank Eakin. Right, welcome back to this edition of Let's Talk About It, where my guest today is none other than Mr. Frank Eakin. Frank, welcome back to the show, man.
Thank you, sir.
All right, we're going to get right into this thing. The book, 12 Years a Slave.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you were hugely responsible about getting this out in the public for the world to see.
The book? Uh-huh.
Absolutely, the book. And we know that your mom did a lot of research in order for a lot of this to happen.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Now, I know that Lou Gossett was involved in the project as well. How did you actually get Lou Gossett involved in this project, Frank?
We decided once, you know, I started discussing things with Plan B, that, you know, it would be an interesting opportunity to produce an audiobook, but it had to be, you know, the right performer or the right person. And so one of our team members who I've worked with for about 10 years, his name is Todd Holslander. Todd, he's based in Houston. He's worked with public broadcasting, and he had produced a project with Lou and James Earl Jones in the early 2000s for the Smithsonian, and it was a series on slavery. And I said, well, that's two really good starting points.
Right, very good starting points.
And
very good starting points.
We felt Lou would be would be the ideal candidate, and the reason, a number of things. One is that Lou's from New York, where Solomon was from. And Lou has a foundation called Eracism, which is all about racial reconciliation. So we felt there's a passion that he could bring to the table here and to his performance because of his interest in the subject matter. And of course he was Fiddler in Roots, in which he won an Emmy, and he just seemed like the perfect choice. And so Lou began a dialogue with Lou. I was introduced through Todd. Lou happened to be in Houston, so we had lunch one day, and the chemistry was really good, and so just started, you know, talking to Lou and getting him comfortable with the concept. He had never performed a full-length audiobook. He's performed segments. He did a segment on the Bible, for example, which was relatively, you know, short in terms of the length. But this is a whole different ballgame. This was 8 days of performing. Depending on the performer, an audiobook, you know, it could be 6 to 8 hours in front of that mic. You know, there are breaks and all that. But you know, Lou's 76 at the time, and he found it very, very challenging, and physically demanding, and also emotionally demanding because of the material. So. In any case, he did a marvelous job, and if you go to audible.com, for example, and there's, you know, hundreds of stars, you know, the 5 stars that we've received, etc., and reviews. I think that it speaks for itself. I mean, people from all over the country and outside the country have placed their reviews, and Lou's performance has been extremely well received. We're really proud of the job he did, and he is, and he. And out of that business relationship, I developed a friendship with Lou because of my interest in the subject matter and in kind of taking 12 Years a Slave and doing things with it to make it relevant today. So we can talk about that later, but Lou, we're working with Lou on projects in relation to racial reconciliation. And it dovetails nicely into his foundation, Eracism. Yeah.
Now, for those of you that may not know, the Solomon Northup story is about an African American man who was actually a free human being out of New York City.
Out of Saratoga, New York.
Out of Saratoga, New York, and he was actually taken captive and brought back to New Orleans.
He was lured on the prospect of a job, and actually. He was brought to Washington, D.C. at first. And in Washington, D.C., the kidnappers who were posing as circus promoters.
Mm-hmm.
They lured him and tricked him, and in Washington D.C. they drugged him, and
Right.
he woke up in chains.
In the chains, yeah.
And then and this was interestingly, and in the book you'll see this, and there's a map in the book showing the location of the slave pen where he was drugged and kept in captivity in Washington D.C.
Wow.
And it's literally, within, you walk out the door and there's the Capitol. Yeah, and it's
Wow.
it's on the mall, closest to the Capitol. I mean, it's for so and all of this was in Washington D.C. in 1841. And so there's an infamous slave trader named Birch. Birch is the one who is taking kidnapped slaves, such as Solomon, again drugging them and placing them on a boat. In this case, it was called the Brig Orleans, shipping them to New Orleans to his partner, whose name was Theophilus Freeman. And so this was called, instead of the Underground Railroad, which was used to help slaves escape.
The reverse.
This is the reverse Underground Railroad. That's what it was called. And so Birch was in charge of the reverse Underground Railroad, and it's scary. And in the footnotes of my mom's research,
Mm-hmm.
Birch was a man with a lot of power in Washington D.C. He wasn't just some guy operating in the shadows. He actually had a government. He was a government official and in charge of police.
Okay.
In Washington D.C. In 1841 when this occurred, and he continued to be, for through the 1840s.
Okay.
So it's a bit. There's a lot of interesting. There are a lot of interesting details in depth, and it's all a bit scary.
Mm-hmm.
And when you dig into who the people were behind,
Right.
this reverse Underground Railroad.
Yeah. I can only imagine what it would be like to be a free man, like I am today, like you are, and all of us sitting in the room, and to be taken into captivity as a free person, taken into captivity for 12 years and becoming a slave. And this is a true story.
Yeah.
That's what's so...
That's what's a bit
baffling.
different about this story versus other
Yes.
slave stories, and he had three children, and a wife and 3 children, and happy and living in Saratoga, New York. In fact, one of your guests today is Devyn Tyler.
Yes,
Devyn
yes.
played Margaret, who is the
daughter.
one of his daughters. Yes.
Yeah, in the movie 12 Years a Slave, and she's going to be on in just a moment. So you guys want to stick around for that as well. What's next for 12 Years a Slave?
Well, I would say what's next. Hopefully the Oscars.
And you know what? This movie has such a huge Oscar buzz that it's just baffling. And once you see the film, you'll understand why it has such a huge Oscar buzz. The acting is just amazing. I mean, every scene keeps you locked in. You don't turn away. And I think the film is how long, Frank?
The film is over 2 hours, about
It's
2 hours and 10 minutes, I believe.
And you don't even realize it.
No, it passes.
Yeah, I mean, it was over before we knew it, but it was over before we knew it because it kept our interest so much we didn't even realize the amount of time that had passed in watching this film.
So after the film, when you saw it, you were at our screening. So, what was your reaction after the film? And I'll tell you what we found almost universally, but I want to hear your story.
Well, for me, it took me back to what my forefathers may have experienced, and it also made me think about what if I had been Solomon Northup. Would I have had the fortitude to fight through that period in my life, or would I have given up myself? Because can you imagine having a family that you've been extracted from and brought into slave ship, and your family knows nothing about you, and you have to stay strong throughout that period? It made me very angry at times because of the strong injustice that I had witnessed in that film. And I'm just glad it wasn't me.
I'll tell you the comments here.
You know what?
There are three guys who independently, they don't even know each other. They came up to me afterwards, or they wrote to me, and these were, these are middle class, upper middle class white guys. And they said, I just wanted to jump in there and kick some butt.
Okay.
And get Solomon out of there, save Solomon.
Yeah.
So I thought that was really interesting. And I'd say that most frequently what I hear is, and I witnessed, because I saw the film first in a private screening in L.A. Then I went to Toronto, then New Orleans, and then here, and I went back to L.A. And so I've experienced it with audiences, over
a wide variety,
numerous times, over a period, 3 months or so. And there are many people that they get out and they just have to process it, and because it really does make you think. And Brad Pitt had a comment, which I think really capsulizes it, and he says it's a movie where you just have to walk around the block, after watching it. You have to think about it and process it, and
absolutely.
And so and I think that it will, I think it's a historic film for that reason. And it will have an impact, and part of what we're trying to do is ensure that it does have an impact.
Right. And I'm glad you're here today, because hopefully being on this show will help it to have that much larger of an impact.
I hope so.
We're going to be back with more with Mr. Frank Eakin, and we're going to be joined by a couple of the actresses, Devyn and Deneen Tyler of 12 Years a Slave. You guys want to stick around? Just a moment, we'll be right back. All right, welcome back to this edition of Let's Talk About It, where today's guest is Mr. Frank Eakin, and we've now been joined by actresses Devyn Tyler and Mother Deneen Tyler. Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you guys so much for being here, taking time out of your busy schedules. I know you're very busy actresses doing a lot of things, and 12 Years a Slave is one of the most recent films that you guys have done. We were talking about the racial divide, or we wanted to talk more about the racial divide, Frank, and the efforts that you guys have now.
Yeah. So one of the ways that we are, again, helping the rubber to meet the road in making this story relevant and push our, push reconciliation forward is we have a project in the town of Bunkie, which present day, Bunkie didn't exist in the 1840s and 50s. But the present day town of Bunkie is where Solomon Northup's enslavement was located. Everything that occurred in this story, once he arrived in central Louisiana, occurred within a 9-mile radius of this little town, right in this dead center of central Louisiana. And when my mom finished university in the 1940s, she came home. They moved to Bunkie. My mom and dad moved to Bunkie, and she became a civil rights leader, a local civil rights leader. Okay. Which at that time, that was something. There were risks involved, I can assure you. Yeah, really. And she, again, somewhat ironically, she was the daughter of a planter, and she was, she was a female. I mean, there were a lot of things here. And so she, she advocated for African Americans, and so she tells a story, which is it's on our website, in which she, for example, brought in the Southern University choir, and it caused this enormous uproar. Okay. And you'll have. I don't want to. People should watch it, hearing her tell the story, but in essence. There were threats. There were people, the whites, and this is during segregation, so the African Americans had to sit in the balcony, and this is a basketball court as well, so the whites sat on the floor, and Mom said, ironically, the best seats were in the balcony because you could see better. Right, you could see better. But many of the whites showed up with guns, including some of her cousins, and shotguns and pistols. And so if you flash forward then to today, obviously some progress has been made, but not as much as I think anyone would like. And there is this deep racial divide in the town of Bunkie. And interestingly, I think many whites don't even realize that it's going on. There's this festering, what would I say, resentment, if you will,
Okay.
and that eats at the soul of the town. And so what we've done is, with the help of Lou Gossett and the dynamic duo here.
All right, the Tylers.
Yes. And reaching out to friends of ours on both the black and the white side in Bunkie, brought everyone together to a venue, which is one of the plantation homes that mentioned in the story. It's Mary McCoy was the name of the slave owner. And it's this Gone with the Wind looking house. And,
is that right?
yes. And this is, and so we with Lou and myself and a journalist from Voice of America was there, and we interviewed blacks and whites and let them just tell their stories.
Okay.
And it was very, very revealing, and I think it surprised both sides. And believe me when I say there's work to be done on both sides. Okay. But there, by starting that dialogue,
right,
with the spotlight of the movie, but using that as a catalyst, then I think that there's a chance that we will see some changes. There's certainly going to be a dialogue. After we left, the mayor formed a biracial commission, and consisting of some of the people in the documentary, and I'm kind of monitoring that, and and we'll be following it and going back to Bunkie. But these are the types of things that we're doing, and the idea is it's not about it's about Bunkie in the sense that Bunkie is an interesting starting point for our efforts, because it is the home of Edwin Epps.
Ground zero.
And it's ground zero, exactly, in the story. But Bunkie could be 1,000 other places in the south and the north. Okay?
Bunkie is 1,000 other places.
It really and
in
truly
itself,
is.
huh? Is that right?
Oh yeah. Oh,
yeah. And I learned that it's reinforced often when I tell the story of what we're doing there, and people say, "Wow, that could be my hometown. That sounds just like Beaumont." This, Jason Peterson said,
Right.
"It sounds like Beaumont." Another one said, "That sounds like my town in Alabama." So Bunkie could be many places.
And the good thing is, we have to get started with dialogue.
That's where it starts.
Because nothing never changes unless we have dialogue about it.
Yeah.
And when I say dialogue, not just anything, but authentic dialogue,
Yeah.
where you're actually telling your truths
Yes.
as you see it, because the integrity that you have is better understood when it's real. So
Right.
when other people hear it, they can identify with that from their side of the fence.
Right. Yeah.
So I think it's a beautiful thing that you guys are taking part in what's happening in Bunkie. How do you feel about that particularly, Devyn?
It's exciting to be involved in this film as an artist and as an actress, but it's also really exciting for me, to be involved in the sense of getting to know the history and getting to actually use this film as a catalyst that allows you to talk about race and just issues that are necessary to talk about. It's nice to have a film that's able to engage audiences on all fronts and not just in the realm of entertainment. And when a film becomes more than entertainment, when it becomes a matter of history or what you stand by, when it becomes a matter of morality, that means that it's transcendent. And I think that's what art is supposed to do. So I'm really, really excited.
Yes.
And for me, I'm glad it opened up the dialogue, but also I hope that it changes people's realities, because their stories are one thing, but if we can start, just getting people together more, so that their reality, they're not looking through this small hole, that they're opened up to different races and different
Right.
cultures or whatever, because your story will remain your story until it changes, until it opens up and gets bigger. And I think the dialogue is excellent, but I think the exposure of the young people in these towns to all walks of life will promote generations that don't have that same mindset from before.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
The hope is with the young people.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the hope definitely lies within the young people, because a lot of us are dying off.
Not me.
Thankfully.
Yeah, sorry.
You guys get my point. But it's those generations, You want to reach the younger generation so that they can make a change, so that it's not the same, so that history doesn't
Repeat itself.
There you go. And so when you're having this type of dialogue, it certainly lends new ideas and new visions to the younger generation. And I think that things are changing, but we have a long way to go.
Yeah, we do, really seriously.
We have a long way to
We
go.
have further distance than I actually was aware, you know. From,
and you see, we are changing. It's funny because in little nooks and crannies like Bunkie, my family's from Franklinton, Louisiana. When you're in there, in the same environment, in the same reality, not getting exposed and not getting out, the change isn't really happening. Like I think what was going on in Bunkie, it was like the kids. The kids are now going to school together, so they make friends, but they can't play at each other's houses after school or on weekends. You know what I mean? Because that mentality is still there.
To this
in the
day?
older
yeah,
generation.
that's
what
I'm
I
saying.
learned.
Really?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. The things that came out.
Oh no, that's
was,
rather shocking. Actually,
was phenomenal.
I wouldn't have
Can
thought
you
that.
imagine that? We're such good friends at school, but our parents, we can't even communicate with each other.
Wow.
So that's why starting from youth and exposing them to everything is what's going to make that change. Because you can talk a good talk, but you have to walk it.
Yeah.
You know, that makes the difference, I think. You know?
Wow. In 2013.
Oh yeah. Basically 2014.
Exactly, right? We're almost there.
That's right.
The good news is there's a leadership in Bunkie who I think, you know, there's some authentic people on both sides. And we actually shot this also as a documentary, which is a work in process. And we decided to not bring in extremists on either side, and so we had people that could actually sit down at the table and get something done, because the goal is to get something done. It's not to create a sensation. And I just had the feeling, and I do have the feeling that you know, that the people that did show up, they know each other and work with each other every day, and on a professional level, they respect each other. The people that were there, the mayor of the city, and some of the white leaders, and some of the black leaders. But when the black folks told their story of what they were feeling and the experiences that they had, as such as the one Deneen mentioned, it's like, wow, we weren't aware of that, and I honestly think they weren't aware of it.
Right.
Yeah, I think they're not. So there's and that's where, you know, letting the sunshine in, right, and exposing it, and that's what dialogue will do. And then, you know, and that's the starting point. So
and every experience is an opportunity to learn. Every experience is an opportunity to learn.
There's some learning going on.
And it's funny, when we were there, it was like, say with the schools, it was like when schools desegregated, when, you know, it's just because that happened, it wasn't like there was going to be an influx of white students going over to the black schools, because the conditions of it weren't as good. That you know, I guess everything, the equipment and all of that. So then, to a certain extent, it did still remain segregated, unless some of the black students, you know, went over to the white schools. But it wasn't like parents would say, "Well, you know what? We're desegregated. Let me send you over to that school."
Yeah, I think the thing, even if the structures were equal, I don't think that
it still would have happened.
No, it's human beings have to come together and saying we love each other, and therefore we're going to work together to make things better for everyone. And we're gonna build an economy, and we're gonna prosper together for the good of all of us and our children. That's what has to happen.
And in order for that to happen, we all have to be on the same accord.
Exactly.
We're going to be back in just a moment with more of Let's Talk About It. You guys want to stick around. All right, welcome back to this edition of Let's Talk About It. Now, we've talked about so many things in the last segment, from the racial divide and things of that nature. Let's segue a little bit into something else that's very important to you, Frank, which is human trafficking. Now, you're putting forth some efforts to make some changes in that area as well. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Yes, well, so human trafficking is slavery in our time. And there's an estimated 20 to 30 million people worldwide who are trafficked. And these aren't just my numbers, these are government numbers, these are well established. And Houston happens to be, unfortunately, one of the most highly trafficked cities. So what we've done is we've established relationships over the last couple of years with some of the top tier human trafficking foundations. They combat, you know, human trafficking, and they each have their specialty. For example, one called Free the Slaves is a well-established you know, foundation. They've had some big entertainment figures behind it, Paul Simon, Prince, others. And Free the Slaves focuses on foreign forced child labor, There's another who is Will Smith's wife, Jada Pinkett Smith, has a foundation, and her foundation is focused on domestic slavery, which is often sexual exploitation.
Okay.
And so what we've done, we have an array of these foundations that we've established relationships with, and we worked with the British Broadcasting Company in a deal where when someone purchases our audiobook, then the BBC pays 20% of the proceeds to these foundations when they use the codes of these foundations.
That's fantastic.
And if for the codes, you can go to our website, and our website is www.12yearsaslave.com, and go to the foundations page, and it tells a bit about each foundation, gives even a video of their video, about their mission, and provides their code, and so your donation can be targeted to the foundation that you would like to support.
Yeah, that's fantastic. That is fantastic. So it just keeps on giving.
Yeah,
it does.
In other words.
And you see, it's funny because like when you relate it to 12 Years a Slave, a lot of people focus mainly on the slavery part of it, but the outer end of it is the human trafficking part that can be brought to light. And many people really need to know. People don't realize how many people are enslaved today with human trafficking.
Right.
It's alive and well, and you're going to bring it to light to a whole lot of people, and that's very necessary because, you think now, we talk about the book and how hard it was, but in this day and age right now, to be enslaved, young women, children, whoever it is, it should be stopped. And I like what you're doing. I clap to you, gratitude for what you're doing.
Well, the average age of these young girls is 13.
Yeah.
That hits you right here. And we're talking millions of people.
Sometimes you see, they have the kids on the milk cartons or whatever. Sometimes you think these kids are abducted and killed. But these kids are like those women that they found that were held for 10 years by that.
Oh,
by the man.
It
could be going on next door to you, So we need to be aware as a society and do all we can to prevent this.
Often the young girls they come from broken homes, and so they're looking for someone to care for them. And unfortunately, people posing as someone who is caring but really seeks to take advantage of them brings them in, and they're forced to work for these guys, and they can't escape due to violence and other types of intimidation.
Right.
So it is truly slavery in the modern day version.
Yeah, yeah. The important thing is that this type of dialogue is taking place. Like I said earlier, because once dialogue takes place, it ignites things and the possibilities for change. But as long as we're quiet about it, nothing will ever happen.
Right.
So Frank, I just want to commend you on your efforts in bringing a stop to human trafficking, and not only that, but certainly bringing attention to it as well. I've enjoyed you so much.
Thank you, and I want to thank our team. We have these ladies, my sisters here, my sisters, and people like Sanjay Patel, who we both know, and others, Jason Peterson, and all these people that are part of my team. It's not just Frank, believe me, and we all are working with that same mission and same passion. So I want to thank our.
And you are so correct. And because of Sanjay Patel, we were able to put this thing together.
Yeah, thanks,
Hi, Sanjay.
Frank and I had the chance to meet, so that's fantastic. All right, I hope you guys have enjoyed this edition of Let's Talk About It just as much as I have with my wonderful guests, Deneen and Devyn Tyler, as well as Mr. Frank Eakin. I'm going to be back in just a moment with Devyn and Deneen. All right, we'll see you. Hello and welcome back to this edition of Let's Talk About It, where my guest today is none other than Devyn Tyler and mother, Deneen Tyler. Absolutely, absolutely. These two lovely ladies are actually actresses in the film that's getting a huge Oscar buzz called 12 Years a Slave. Man, first of all, how did you guys get in the movie itself?
We paid.
They paid under the table. Get me in.
Actually, been doing this for a while, and the opportunity came up, and it's the second time that we've been in a Brad Pitt type film together. Curious Case of Benjamin Buttons. Brad Pitt was in it, and this one he's producing and starring in it. But agent called us, and we both went and auditioned.
Though, like old-fashioned.
Is that right?
Audition, called back, yeah.
And it's funny because Devyn was initially cast as his wife, as Chiwetel's wife.
Yeah.
Is that right?
But
yes.
but when they physically saw her, you know how young, that she looked, they switched it to the daughter after it came back. But yeah, we auditioned like everybody else, got callbacks and stuff like that, And it's funny because, of course, when this was happening, audition for 12 Years a Slave, we had no idea about all of this to come. No.
And it was difficult because sometimes it's hard to be Black female actresses because it limits the amount of work that you can get. It depends on the types of projects that come through. And so Django Unchained was another film that also shot in New Orleans. And so soon after that, auditions for 12 Years came in, and we were kind of nervous because it was kind of the same genre. So we thought, of course, another movie that's going to require, we kind of wanted a different story to tell.
Yeah.
But then when everything unfold, and when we were able to read the script, when we were actually able to sit down and realize what we were doing, we realized it was a very different story that was being told. And so now where we are right now, we can't really believe it. We're kind of still, I'm in shock.
The shooting of it, for me, because Devyn's character, she was free.
Right.
But my character, Phoebe, I was a slave, and from day one on the set, being it was a period piece, the clothes, the tools that we used to garden, our shoes, everything on the set was just so, it was dated, and it felt so very real. When the first rehearsal that we had was, we were on Epps Plantation, and we're standing there, and he's giving his Bible sermon or whatever, and using his explicit words and stuff. And it was funny because all the actors were standing there, and I don't think it was an element of acting. I think it was an element of shock, especially for the younger ones, to think, wow, this really happened, and you couldn't say nothing, or you couldn't, do anything. Being on set was very surreal. Picking the cotton,
it was
everything.
in summer, wasn't it?
Oh my God, it was in summer. It was last summer, and period piece, so you had on long sleeve clothes and everything. And it was hard to endure. It was a hard movie. The scenes themselves, like we didn't interact with all of the actors because they had separate plantations. But the plantation that I was on with Chiwetel and Patsy, the day that they did the whipping scene when she got whipped in there, the bad one, there wasn't a dry eye on the set.
Is that right?
We were standing there, it just, sorry.
It was one of those scenes in the film. As I was watching it, I actually got up and left out of the theater when I saw that happening, because I was just like, I can't take it. It was just too much for me to bear. For those of you that may not know, Chiwetel is actually the main character who plays
Solomon
Northup in the film, who also did an amazing job.
Amazing
job.
Amazing job.
And you know what? I want to go back to your scene. And I remember very well because we had just met on red carpet for the exclusive that night, and then we went to see the film. And I remembered seeing the emotion that you gave in that field, the way you fell to the ground. And when I looked, it was like you were so believable. When I saw that, I'm like, she's a good actress. Because what did you draw from in order to feel the pain that we saw visibly on the screen?
I've lived long enough to have a lot of stuff to draw from. I have a draw from spot that I go to, for different movies. But I must say, when you're working with an actor as explosive as Michael Fassbender, when he came in there and he was looking for Patsy, he was looking for Patsy, that's why he did that. But you heard him from the house start slamming things around and coming, and it was just like he's coming to look for her or whatever. And it was very physical, the throwing to the ground and everything like that. But it made it authentic. So it was like when we first started shooting, there was a child standing with me. But the explosiveness of it and the falling on the ground, the child might have gotten hurt, so we took her out of there and just said, let's go for it. He's like, you know, do you want me to calm down a little bit or whatever? I'm like, no, no, no. You know,
full throttle.
Go full throttle or whatever. And it was a great opportunity working with him.
And it came across so powerfully in that moment when you watched the film. Because, again, as I told you before when we had dialogue, that sticks out in my head.
I had friends saying, I want to go to the screen and say, leave her alone, you know. Like
I mean,
thank you. That's what you want it to do. That's the end result as an artist. That's what you want others to feel when they watch your work.
And believe me, I felt it.
Thank you.
I felt it, and I think you're an amazing actress.
Thank you very much. I'll pay you later.
Pay you later. Thank you. And that's real talk. And
I appreciate it.
For those that know me and know me well, I don't just say something. I only say what I mean.
Thank you very much.
And so you were just simply amazing.
Thank
and
you.
Devyn.
Yes.
Devyn played,
Margaret.
Margaret in the film 12 Years a Slave, who was actually the daughter of Solomon Northup. And Solomon came back into her life at the end of the film. And your part, obviously you got a lot of things from your mom because you were just as effective in your role as the daughter of Solomon Northup in the end of the film. And what stood out with me was the fact that it was not necessarily a tearful reunion, but what came across was the acting in your face. Your expressions is what made that character believable.
Thank you.
The way that you walked up to him and embraced him. And at that point, you were an older daughter. Of course, he's been out of your life for 12 years.
Yes.
And he was returning after that, and life had changed. So you were no longer his little girl, but you were his daughter who had grown up and became married. And you were with your husband in that particular scene. And I remembered you just walking over and hugging your father the way you did. But it was what was here that resonated with me.
Thank you.
Absolutely. So unlike, I mean, just like your mother.
Thank
you. You know.
Well, that scene wore me out too, being that it was her when it came on.
Did it?
Yeah.
That was really difficult just because on set we didn't really, there was no room for introducing yourself. Usually if you go onto a set before everybody even starts, you have a period where you introduce yourself, say, hi, my name is Devyn, and you know, I'll be playing this. There was none of that on this set. It was just straight rehearsal.
But that
because
worked.
There's no room for that. Like, Chiwetel didn't have room to leave. Like, he was right where he needed to be. So once he walked on sets, he just said, let's do this, and then we started doing it. And it was just a really emotion between takes. We didn't speak to each other really and things like that, just because it was so, the room was so full of everything. And it was just an amazing experience. So we had very different experiences on the film, being in two different places, emotionally and physically present.
Right.
But the film itself just provides so much room for reflection and thought. So it's really exciting.
And how do you guys feel about the things that are happening in your lives now because of the film 12 Years a Slave?
We met Frank.
We met Frank!
Was that me, Frank Eakin?
That's Frankie!
We can pull into that. Yeah, it was phenomenal how we got into the Eakin world and then learned of his mother and that story. And that journey alone has been absolutely incredible. But yeah, this is all like a dream. I can't even, it's surreal.
Yeah.
It's surreal.
Well, you know what? And a part of making that dream come true for us is to have you guys here on the set of Let's Talk About It.
We appreciate it.
So we're very thankful to have such amazing talent here on the set to discuss this amazing film. And we're going to come back in just a moment with more Let's Talk About It with daughter Devyn Tyler and mother Deneen Tyler. We'll be back in just a moment. Welcome back to this edition of Let's Talk About It, where we have the critically acclaimed actresses from the movie 12 Years a Slave. Now, you guys are a part of a huge film, 12 Years a Slave, for those of you that may be just joining us. And not only that, but you're a mother and daughter acting team, which I find, well, I wouldn't say team, but...
It comes across like that.
Yeah, because now you guys have done, how many films together?
4. We've done 4 films together.
Where we've just been in the
in the same
film.
In the same film. Yeah.
Yeah.
Benjamin Buttons was the same person. We played the same character, her younger and myself older.
Right.
Wow.
In that.
Tell me this: when you go in for auditions, do you ever let them know that you're mother and daughter, or do you avoid that?
If it's required, like recently we have a photo together that we did submit, just in case somebody is looking for a mother-daughter combination that we can be submitted for it. But usually we go in on our own.
And it doesn't
Really?
always have to be
yeah.
mother-daughter. It can be a person young and then getting older.
Right.
Like in the case of
In
the
which
Benjamin
color?
Button
Right.
film.
Yeah, exactly.
But usually that's not something we play at first, usually because we're independently trained.
Exactly.
I grew up watching her and things like that, but
Okay.
we're definitely separate. We're only packaged together at very specific times.
I call my entrance like guerrilla theater. I started out doing local theater in New Orleans, and then there were people that had agents, and it snowballed into auditioning for movies and commercials and whatnot. Devyn just was a baby being dragged around on set most of her life, you know what I mean, when I was doing theater and stuff. And then, you know, once she got older, she started branching out, doing her own stuff. But after moving to Houston, she graduated from the High School for Performing and Visual Arts. So she's trained like a beast. She's Shakespeare. She won Young Arts or whatever. So she has real training to where, you know, I look at her and I'm like, wow. You know, she doesn't realize. I've been doing it longer, but she just has awesome training.
But it's nice to have somebody so close that does the same thing, to where we can learn from each other, we can read sides together, I grew up watching her coach, so now if I have to coach somebody, I know how to do that and things.
Right.
So she's where my acting community started. And that it makes a difference when your mom is too.
Yeah, you had a great foundation.
Yeah, definitely a great foundation that I don't take for granted.
Yeah. Now you won some type of award with the presidential.
Yes, there's a competition called Young Arts, which is through the National Foundation for Advancement in the Arts, where high schoolers from all across the nation, they send in auditions in all of the art areas. So you have theater and film and visual arts and dance and everything. And a few selected students are flown to Miami for master classes and performances, and then the next step of that is being flown to New York and a performance at the Baryshnikov Art Center. And then if your grades are good, the next step is to be a presidential scholar in the arts and perform at the Kennedy Center. So I was actually a presidential scholar in the arts the first year that Barack Obama was elected president.
Wow.
So that was really nice for me. So we went to DC, and I got to perform at the Kennedy Center in 2009, right before I went to college. So I've had really great opportunities to be surrounded with wonderful artists. So not just mom, but then outside of that inspire me to be better and to want to work.
Absolutely, absolutely. Now, Deneen, I'd like to ask you, what does it feel like to have a daughter who is following in your footsteps and doing so well in the industry of acting?
That's me.
You know what? It's funny because it's like you know, to a certain extent you say following in my footsteps, but she's so, you know, you want your kids to be better than you are. She's so much better, you know, when I say than I am, because she graduated from Columbia. I'm proud to say, you know, with that, and her degree is in French, so she's fluent in French. I don't understand French. You know what I mean? And so just so you know, to have your child, I went to Paris with her, and I don't understand or speak any of it, so all I had to do was shut up for 2 weeks while she ordered my food and went around with her. And as a mother, I am extremely proud. I am proud because, you know, our youth, thank you. You know, all of us, when we have kids, we're turning them out into society. You know, you can have them and fill them with goodness, you can have them and just throw them out there, but I am proud of the woman that I am letting loose on the world.
Wow. And you know what? That is huge. That is huge. That is huge.
Got goosebumps.
I can see it all. I can see it in your face is very. Her face is very expressive. I can see it all in your face when you said that.
All her life, she's just been a great child, great human. You know, I love her to death. And you know, for some people, you know, when their kids come home from college, they come home from college and I don't see them. Devyn, nope, focused. She's there doing her thing, and I hope it takes her wherever she wants to go.
We're really close.
This whole acting career thing, sort of like 12 years a slave for us. She was saying, well, how is it being this? When I first started acting, we had maybe one audition a year. one every 6 months in New Orleans. They didn't have a market. And I'm hoping the same thing happens for Texas even more, because we had a mayor that passed these tax incentives that turned it into Hollywood South, to where I just happened to be. They say success is when opportunity and preparation meet. And I was sitting in New Orleans, just, you know, ready to act, doing it and stuff. There was a time when my husband was like, well, you know, you really gonna act? Do you think you're an actor? One audition a year? I'm like, I'm an actor. You just wait for it. And then those incentives passed, and it just started snowballing. And I think as of now, I might have done maybe 40 films. Television, as, you know, from New Orleans. Thank you.
That is
But, you know, and the thing
amazing.
that's great about that is we've never worked in, I mean, it's not great, but we've never worked really in New York or Los Angeles. A lot of people think if you want to be an actress, then you have to travel to these two
Not
places.
so.
But the New Orleans market is very alive, and it's very, we're Hollywood South, where we just
And New
do
Orleans
it, you know?
is, it really
It's
is.
just a different feel, and as a child growing up in the entertainment industry, I was able to be grounded in a way that I maybe wouldn't have been able to be if I would have been in the LA market as a young person, or in the New York
The life
market.
out there is just different.
It's just different. So
It's
it's
very
been a
different.
great market. It's been wonderful projects that we get that come down. It's not just anything. There are a lot of really great films. So
Right.
we're really blessed to be in that market. And she's, you know, to be an actress, to be that persistent. She teaches me about persistency. I mean, and
Yeah.
consistency. You just keep going. You do the same thing, and eventually it pays off. You know?
That is fantastic. You know, we all need somebody to look up to.
Yes.
And it's nothing like having the role model that lives in your home.
right there.
That lives in your home, because we have so many people, and especially young people, who are looking for role models outside of the parameter of the home.
Very true.
And oftentimes this type of thing misleads
Very true.
them. But when you can have a role model
Yeah, no.
in the home,
Right.
Yeah.
like your mother.
Mm.
Come on now. Can I get an amen? Can I get an amen? That's what I'm talking about. That's what I'm talking about. That's what I'm talking about. Now you guys, did you end up in Houston because of Katrina?
Yes.
Yes, we did.
Yes.
Now tell me a little bit about that story.
It was fun.
Oh, live.
No.
It hit the first week of high school for me. So I had just gotten ready for high school. I was really excited. I was going to go to a really good high school in New Orleans, and I had been researching on it because high school was such a big deal for me and all that kind of
All
stuff.
our friends.
All my friends, we were all just going together, and then I went to school for a week, and then we had to evacuate, and then we came here, and then for about a month we just couldn't go home because we
How
couldn't
bad things
travel.
were?
Yeah.
Yeah, we had 8 feet of standing water for a month
Yeah.
in our house. So basically, when we
lost
went back,
everything.
furniture was deteriorated. You know, it just was.
She lost her wedding dress, her
Oh,
wedding
wow.
thing. Oh yeah, no, we lost everything, definitely. And
Wow.
that experience was, we don't even remember it.
You
Like
know,
that was
you
Really?
go in survival mode.
Yeah.
You know, people. It was around the time when I was making 40. I said my age around the time. The time was, and you know, people are like, "Ooh, I'm making 40," and they're freaking out. When I made 40, I was surviving.
Yeah.
I was surviving because you know, your jobs, well, my husband's job, you know, everything is gone and you have to make a new life. But I'd say this to anyone who ever experiences something as traumatic as that, as long as you have yourself, your family, your core, your belief in whatever you believe in, that by God, you can make it. That's why people, it's like the holidays are coming. Oh, do I have enough money for gifts? I might lose my house in this. You know what? None of that matters in the end. It can all leave you in a blink of an eye, you know.
Absolutely.
So we're blessed to be here. Texas embraced us, you know.
Yeah.
Really, Texas embraced us and helped us, and we got back on our feet. And yeah, and so now we're New Orleans and Texas, you know, and we love both places.
That is fantastic. And you know what? You really learn who you are through the adversities that take place in your life.
Yes.
If you never have adversity, you never know who you really are.
Really
You know,
does.
and it's just like a diamond. It takes a whole bunch of friction in
That's
order for
right.
those things to
That's
really
right.
mature and to become what its potential
You
is.
are right.
And certainly you guys have done that by going through what you went through in New Orleans, coming to Texas, blowing up in the industry of acting. And I'm saying blowing up because everything is a step.
Yeah.
Very true.
Speak it in there.
There you go. There you go. There you go. And like we said earlier, everything has to start somewhere.
It does.
It has to start somewhere. And I'm so glad that you guys ended up in Houston, Texas, and I had the opportunity, needless to say, to meet you guys.
Thank you.
Yeah, now we're going to talk a little bit more when we come back in just a moment. Let's talk about it. You guys want to stick around? Okay, y'all doing so good.
We're very chatty. Frank calls us seamless.
That was good. That was great.
Love it, love it.
Okay, we want to go into the final,
This is it.
and then we'll.
Do you think about what you're doing in the future? I'll think about what I'm doing in the future, what I have coming up.
We know New York is in the future for somebody.
Big Apple.
Large.
I'm going to visit you when I come to New York.
Yes, I will be in Harlem.
I want to come and see the. Really?
Harlem is good stuff now.
Yes, Harlem is the bomb.
I actually have a friend. I have a friend who I'm staying with 2 other friends, but I have a friend who lives in a building that's very, very nearby. That is like a W.E.B. Du Bois lived there. Like it's one of those like historic buildings and things like that. So one of my favorite teachers at Columbia taught about the Harlem Renaissance.
Oh,
so
that's my favorite time.
We just love, talking and being like young intellectuals in Harlem right now is just like a dream for me.
Now, see, the funny part, the collection, Frank, that I was telling you about, my grandfather was a Harlem Renaissance artist. He had
In New
going up
Orleans.
to New York and stuff like that. It's deep. Okay.
Wow, nice.
Oh, all right.
That's gonna be fun.
All right.
We're
We
set.
ready? Okay. 5, 4, 3, 2.
And welcome back to this edition of Let's Talk About It. I'll reintroduce my wonderful guests again, Deneen and Devyn Tyler. Of course, when we left off, we were talking about your careers and things of that nature, what you're doing, so on and so forth. Now, I understand you just finished a film that's been released, that's out now.
Yes.
Now, what's the name of that film?
It's called Dallas Buyers Club. And it's funny because it's another true story. And it's set, the man that, the lead, Matthew McConaughey plays the lead, Ron Woodruff. And he in real life is deceased now, but this is a story that happened in Texas. You know, it was about a man who was diagnosed with AIDS, and they didn't have the right type of medicines in the 80s to treat it. So what he did was he went all around the world, out of the country, to find unapproved drugs that weren't approved by the FDA that would help people. And he brought it into Texas and opened up buyers clubs. Since it was illegal to sell the drugs, he sold memberships to the club. And then you could get as much of the drugs that you needed to.
Wow.
They gave him 30 days and he lived 7 years after that. I play the role of Denise. I'm a volunteer at the club. And it's in theaters now.
All right. Well, guess what? I'll probably be going to see that tonight. Yeah, that is fantastic.
Thank you.
And that's currently in theaters now. So you guys definitely go out and support that film, certainly because H-Town's own, by way of New Orleans, is a big part of that film. And now for yourself, I understand you're about to move to New York?
I am. I just graduated in May. I just graduated college, and I was up in
Columbia.
college. I was in Columbia in New York. And one of the things that I wanted to do before I got older was I did want to give New York a try. I've been auditioning in New Orleans for my entire life. New Orleans and Texas is where the majority of my work comes from. But I have a really good support system in New York, a lot of friends that I've met, a lot of fellow artists, and I'd like to give that a shot. And then I also have, since that's where I went to school, I have a lot of professors and just people in my business network and things like that that I just want to bond with for a bit. So I'm going to move up to New York in January. It's going to be very cold. And we'll see how that goes. I could be there for maybe a year, a little bit longer. But I hope to continue auditioning in New Orleans, to start auditioning in New York and maybe try that market a little bit, maybe get back into some theater because I miss it. And so we'll see where that takes me.
Yeah. I think that is fantastic. And I also think it's fantastic when you have a dream or a vision that you pursue the dream or vision. You don't want to live your life and then look back one day and say, I wish I would have.
Right.
You know, we only have one life, and it's not a dress rehearsal.
Yes.
No pun intended. But you know, so you I always admire people that have a vision and work toward making the vision come to pass. And I myself try to practice it in my own life. I've missed it a couple of times here and there, don't get me wrong. But I don't want to look back at my life in its end.
That's right.
And say, I wish I would have tried to have a talk show.
Yes.
I wish I would have tried to be a photographer.
That's right.
I wish I would have tried to be an author.
Yeah.
Do it.
Do it.
And I say the same thing to you. So what's next for you?
What's next is I go to shoot a movie called 99 Homes in a couple of weeks, but I have a series called Star-Crossed. I play mother of one. It's like aliens come and they go to school with the humans. It's more of a teen film, and I play that. And I also have a small role in the Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, which is gonna open up next year. So I just hope to keep auditioning, keep working, keep meeting nice people, and living life.
Yes, and that's what life is all about, living life. And so many people are afraid to live their lives.
Yeah,
you know?
And I'd like to tell young actors, because I try to mentor young people getting into it. If you're interested in acting, start acting. School play, church play, or whatever. Don't wait till you get to a certain age and just say, I want to be on TV and think it's going to happen. Start laying your groundwork now, even if you have to write little plays and do it on your iPhone or whatever. But whatever you want to be in life, if you start it and you do it for 20 years, if you bake cookies for 20 years and someone asks, what does she do? You're going to say, she's a cookie baker, you know. Whatever you want to do, start doing it. And if you never stop, that's what you'll become.
That's very true.
But start your dreams as early as possible. Don't let anyone tell you that you can't do it. And Shirley Chisholm, I had the pleasure of meeting her. Her autograph was always, it's like shoot for the highest that you can shoot for. And you know, you shoot for the moon, you land on the stars, however it works, but you know, just go for it. Don't let anybody stop you.
And then also, I just wanted to add that one thing. I have a lot of friends that ask me about, you know, being in films and they think that we're celebrities or something like that. There's a really big difference between I want to be famous and I want to be an actress. My goal in life is not to be in Hollywood. My goal is to do really good work. And if I am the type of person where, I mean, my IMDb page can be filled with all sorts of different projects, but when you see me in real life, you do not know exactly who I am. I'm okay with that. We don't do this to be famous. We do it because the work is really, really fun and very, very rewarding. So know that there's a difference between those two things, and to be a real actress, as my mom has taught me, it takes consistency and it takes failure and it takes bravery and it takes faith, because you don't know where things are coming from.
Absolutely.
And that kind of lifestyle is much different than what most people think that it is.
Right.
And that's just an important distinction to know.
And it is an important distinction. You know what I appreciate about you, and I'm the humble spirit that you have.
Oh, thank you.
Isn't it amazing?
Thank you.
The humble spirit that you
Thank
have.
Yeah.
And of course, being in the photography industry and working with actors, actresses, entertainers, and things of that nature, I always find it refreshing when someone is real and down to earth, because I can relate to you. Yeah, you can be a friend of mine.
Definitely.
Because you're keeping it real with me, you know, and I like that.
It's hard when you meet, you know, we meet people that, you know, that are actors or actresses or stars and things like that, and they just, I don't know, it's like they think that they walk in different places. Or I feel like if there was something that I was able to do as an actress, it would be to remind people when they meet me, it's like, oh, she's an actress, I'm just a person.
Exactly.
You know, that's it. And I love what I do. Acting is what I do. But there's a certain human quality that's being taken out of art right now, and I think if we put that back in, that we could do a lot more than what we're doing. So.
And it seems like you're going to be definitely instrumental in putting that back in.
I hope so.
Yeah. Now, what type of advice would you give to someone who wants to be an actress as a person your age? What would you say to that person? That little girl who says, I want to be an actress, what would you say to her?
Well, I would say that if that little girl is trying to do it for the wrong reasons, that it's dangerous. And I would say that fame is not something that we should shoot for, because it can be very empty and unrewarding. I would say that acting is a beautiful thing to do because it's taught me about who I am as a person. It's taught me about how to present myself. how to just simply walk into a room and introduce myself to somebody else. That changes when you realize how to use your body, because this is, as an actress, this is all I've got. We don't use instruments, or we have props and stuff. This is all I got. So I think that's good. But I do think that there's a level of don't be afraid to be vulnerable in a safe space.
Yes.
Because that, a lot of acting for me has been learning where I'm weakest and using that. And I think that once you learn how to be vulnerable in front of other people, then you learn a lot more about the world and about yourself. So don't be afraid to be vulnerable, but make sure that you're safe.
And meet Mr. Shakespeare.
Shakespeare is a wonderful man.
You know, it just opens you. Be really wide in your heaviness, in your skill set. You know, don't block yourself in, but, you know, to perform Shakespeare, you know, that's what she won Young Arts doing. Yeah. And as a parent, you know, she's doing Shakespeare. I didn't understand half the stuff she's saying. You know, it's just like, it just brings you to another level, you know. And with young people, I'd love to write something. No boxes. Don't box your life in. You're not just one thing. You're many things. So don't let people box you into one thing. Be all that you can be. That's literal, you know. Don't box yourself into corners and stuff.
And have fun.
Absolutely. Man, you guys, I could interview y'all all the time, man.
My next movie come out, I'm going to come back.
You know what? And that's the good thing, because you're always welcome back to the set of Let's Talk About It.
Thank you.
I don't only see you as a guest, but I now see you as a friend.
Indeed. You know it.
All right.
Sorry.
That is hilarious. I have enjoyed you guys so much.
You.
And you are always welcome back to the set of Let's Talk About It.
Thank you and your staff.
Yes,
wonderful.
Wonderful. Yes, Elizabeth Jackson and Miss Tony McClammy. Yes. They were wonderful.
Yes.
Give them a round of applause. Yes. Thank you guys so much for joining us on this edition of Let's Talk About It. But you know what? Before we go, can you guys tell the world how to get in touch with you some kind of way? If they are interested, or somebody sees you and say, hey, I want them to audition for this, how would they get in touch with you guys?
Well, definitely you can go to imdb.com and type in Deneen Tyler or Devyn Tyler. Also Deneen Tyler on Facebook.
And also I have a LinkedIn profile that you can always reach me at. That would be prudent. I think you can search LinkedIn, right? Yeah, you got it. That's good. And if you see me on the street, give me a high five.
All right, holla. All right, and definitely, if you guys have not seen this film, 12 Years a Slave, certainly go to the theaters and see it.
And get this book.
And get this book. Definitely get this book. It's also on audio that's being narrated by none other than Louis Gossett Jr. You guys definitely want to pick this book up. And this particular shot was done by Sanjay Patel. So thumbs up to Mr. Sanjay Patel. All right, for more information on this show, you can certainly reach us at Let's Talk About It 12tv@gmail.com. That's Let's Talk About It 12tv@gmail.com. All right, until next time.